Good morning, I'm Bree Driscoll, and here's your Spectrum News in 90. Arrests are ramping up as colleges look to end pro-Palestinian protests ahead of graduations. Dozens of people were arrested yesterday during protests at universities in Texas, Utah, and Virginia. Meanwhile, overnight protesters at Columbia University barricading themselves inside the historic Hamilton Hall as the school implements suspensions for all remaining protesters.
Today's an absolute tragic day for the city of Charlotte and for the profession of law enforcement.
At least 4 law enforcement officers are dead following a shooting in a residential Charlotte, North Carolina neighborhood. 4 others were hurt. It's one of the deadliest days for law enforcement in recent years. The wanted man they were seeking was also killed. 2 other suspects are in custody. Prosecution of former President Donald Trump. We're also awaiting a ruling from the judge on whether Trump will be held in contempt for breaking his gag order. The trial's expected to go on another month or more. And for the first time since 2006, the Los Angeles Dodgers playing an entire 9 innings without striking out once. Those are your headlines. Now here's a look at your weather on the ones.
Hi, I'm meteorologist Julie Marquez. We have areas of showers and thunderstorms expected to increase in coverage across the central United States with a risk of severe weather again today, stretching from Iowa all the way down through Oklahoma and into Texas. Rain moving into the northeast, and we have some rain moving towards Chicago and Milwaukee tonight. Meanwhile, LA will stay dry, but we have some rain and some snow in the Pacific Northwest.
Thanks so much for joining us here on Spectrum News. I'm Bree Driscoll. Today is Tuesday, April 30th. Our top story: arrests are ramping up as colleges look to end pro-Palestinian protests ahead of graduations. The schools say the demonstrations are distracting and pose potential safety risks. At Columbia University, where the encampments began, protesters breaking into Hamilton Hall shortly after midnight and barricading themselves inside. Activists argue they have a right to speak up for civilians being killed in Gaza. Many want their universities to eliminate investments tied to Israel. Spectrum's Alyssa Policelli is on scene for us this morning at Columbia University. Alyssa, significant changes in the nature of this protest overnight.
Well, Bree, this is the most serious escalation we have seen on campus since the NYPD was invited on campus to clear the encampment nearly 2 weeks ago. We are in Hall. That's the academic building that student protesters were able to seize control of overnight. You can see they have hung a banner that reads "Free Palestine" from one of the windows of this academic building. That was placed here just a couple hours ago as students gained control of this building. It was around 2 o'clock in the morning, about 12 hours after the university said it would begin suspending students for being a part of this encampment. If they did not disperse, students stormed and seized Hamilton Hall, which they have renamed Hins Hall in honor of who they call a 6-year-old Ghazian martyr who was killed in the Israel-Hamas war. In this video, you can see pro-Palestinian students breaking glass windows to one of the doors of Hamilton Hall to gain access. Students are reportedly using zip ties and furniture to barricade the doors of this academic building, which we have learned houses many of the administrative offices like financial aid and the registrar. Earlier this morning, were not involved in these demonstrations, reacting to this latest escalation.
This is absurd. It's kind of insane that several of us that aren't a part of this are kind of getting dragged into this. We can't even get into campus without going through these protests, and several of us are just trying to get by. We just want to finish our exams and go home.
And the last day of classes was yesterday, but it is worth noting that Hamilton Hall has a history of being taken over by students at Columbia University during several student movements, including the civil rights and the anti-Vietnam War protests, and now by this pro-Palestinian group. The student organizers have released statements saying they are going to continue to occupy Hamilton Hall until their 3 demands are met, which is to divest in Israel, have the university be more transparent about their financial holdings, and grant them amnesty to everyone who has been involved in these demonstrations. Now, Bree, according to this, which is this campus, the main campus here at Columbia, when and if at all possible today because of safety concerns. So it'll be interesting to see how this develops throughout the day as tensions do remain high on campus.
All right, Alyssa Policelli, thank you very much. Testimony resuming today in the Manhattan criminal hush money prosecution of former President Donald Trump. Spectrum's political reporter Ayanna Harry has been covering the trial from the courthouse and has a close look at today's key players.
They're helping a former president fight for his legal future. Donald Trump's defense team includes lead attorney Todd Blanche. Blanche left a prestigious Wall Street law firm last year to start his own firm with a primary client of Donald Trump.
We saw from Mr. Blanche's opening, his opening was a little bit, what are we doing here? There is no crime.
On the defense for Trump, Emil Bovey, trafficking rings, and longtime criminal defense attorney Susan Neckles. Neckles earned a reputation of taking on tough clients, including clients with mob ties.
The defense has to do two things to win a case like this. Yes, they have to attack the credibility of the witnesses, but they also have to attack the credibility of the story.
For this first criminal prosecution of a former president, Manhattan DA Alvin Bragg put together a team of seasoned prosecutors, including Joshua Steinglass. Steinglass helped secure a conviction against the Trump Organization for tax fraud.
He brings his trial skills and his trial smarts, his ability to relate to juries, and his ability to sort of leave no stone unturned in an investigation.
Steinglass is working alongside fellow prosecutors Christopher Conroy and Susan Hoffinger, a criminal defense attorney. Attorney Ron Kuby believes,
I think that the prosecution is laying out a fairly complicated case in a way that is easy to follow and also captures the attention of the jurors.
Trump is accused of falsifying business records to cover up an affair during the 2016 run for the White House. Prosecutors allege the hush money payment was made through Trump's former fixer, Michael Cohen, and Cohen is expected to play a pivotal role in the trial, even though he's admitted to lying under oath in the past.
Certainly, he's going to be the central witness in this case, but one expects that by the time he testifies, much of what he is going to say is going to have been proven by less controversial witnesses.
And presiding over what's expected to be a 6-week trial is Judge Juan Merchan. Born in Colombia, earned a reputation as a no-nonsense judge. Former prosecutor Bonnie Sard has known Judge Merchan for years.
He is smart. He is measured. He is controlled. And, he's one of those judges who calls it like it is.
Ayanna Harry, Spectrum News.
Coming up on Spectrum News, we'll look at how the White House is navigating the ongoing student protests. Plus, what's at stake in Michigan ahead of former President Trump's visit there? That's just ahead on Spectrum News.
We live in a country where diabetes and obesity are our biggest health challenges.
A suboptimal diet is the #1 risk factor for dying of a chronic disease.
Access to healthy foods are not an option.
Something's terribly wrong that this is allowed to happen.
Our healthcare system is not sustainable.
This is actually where the hard work begins.
Watch Exploring Your Health, USA1C, Fighting the Rise of Diabetes. Available on all your fit devices.
Sorry, guys, that took me for... What is this?
Well, you know how our T-Mobile home internet can slow down?
Uh-huh.
Turns out, walls can get in the way. So I fixed it.
So instead of getting us Spectrum internet, which is fast and reliable 24/7, you got us internet that can be blocked by walls.
Yes, but I think I fixed it.
By smashing a hole through our wall.
Well, technically, walls. Yeah, I might not want to go in the dining room.
Don't settle for T-Mobile cell phone internet.
Kids are natural.
This is why I don't leave the house.
Get faster, more reliable internet speeds with Spectrum.
When I was in foster care, I never knew when I would have to move, so I always had my suitcase ready to go. Then my parents cook my favorite breakfast for me every morning. My parents take me on trips I never thought I would go on. They gave me a home and an even better reason to use that suitcase. My parents aren't perfect, but they're perfect for me.
I found hope in the midst of an overwhelming situation.
Alcoholism is a disease that can affect any family. Everyone suffers, but there is help and hope at Al-Anon Family Groups.
Al-Anon gave me my life back. I'm a better father and husband.
Are you in an overwhelming situation because of someone else is drinking, Al-Anon and Alateen can help. Local and virtual meetings are available. Maybe one could work for you. Call 1-866-200-0033 or visit alanon.org/hope.
I'm meteorologist Julie Marquez, and I want to start with a look ahead to a 7-day rainfall forecast. And the one thing that's going to pop out at you is right here, the central part of the country, from Minnesota and Wisconsin all the way down to Texas and Louisiana. There are going to be several rounds of rain, thunderstorms, some severe, but also bringing heavy rain. And with all this rain expected in the coming week, it's going to lead to additional flooding concerns, places like Kansas City and Des Moines. So you can see that right there in the central United States. Showers and storms will be making their way in the next 7 days to parts of the southeast. Rain will be moving into the northeast, and we have rain and snow in parts of the Pacific Northwest. The one area not getting a lot of rain, the southwest. So areas of Southern California, parts of New Mexico and Arizona. Gusty winds, but likely staying rain-free. Now here's a look at the 5. But when you look here, the yellow, the orange shading, level 2 or 3 out of 5 of tornadoes, winds over 70 miles per hour and very large hail. And unfortunately, this is in some areas that have already been hard hit with the tornado damage in the last week. So we have places like Omaha and Lincoln, Nebraska, down to Wichita, Kansas, Des Moines, Iowa. Watch out for this. Same thing in Kansas City. Make sure you have the alerts set to go and the notifications on your cell phone on the Spectrum News app. You'll be alerted if there is severe weather in your area. Tomorrow, that risk includes most of Kansas, Oklahoma, and now all the way down into places like Midland, Texas, where we continue to see those shower storm chances. That'll be ramping up through the day today. So it'll be quieter to start. Look at this evening. This is an area of intense thunderstorms at 8, 9, 10 o'clock tonight in parts of Oklahoma, Kansas, and then watch what happens tomorrow. Starts a little bit quiet in the morning, but in front here, watch for the severe threat Wednesday night.
Well, if you're just joining us or heading out the door, here's a look at what you need to know. Arrests are ramping up as colleges look to end pro-Palestinian protests ahead of graduations. Meanwhile, protesters at Columbia barricading themselves inside the historic Hamilton Hall. At least 4 law enforcement officers are dead following a shooting at a Charlotte home. 4 others were hurt. The wanted man they were seeking was killed, and 2 other suspects are in custody. Testimony resuming today in the Manhattan criminal hush money prosecution of former President Donald Trump. We're also awaiting a ruling from the judge on whether Trump will be held in contempt for breaking his gag order. And that's a look at what you need to know this morning. It's time now for our political buzz. Jason Fechner joins us now. Jason, these protests are intensifying across the country. We're seeing more of them, those pro-Palestinian protests. We're seeing more arrests. President Biden's response to the protests has been somewhat subdued. Are you surprised by this?
Good morning. Not necessarily surprising, at least not at this point. I think we all have to remember that the protests we're seeing on dozens of college campuses across the country right now are a relatively small part of a much bigger and tragic picture playing out overseas, of course, and that's to try to get Hamas and Israel right now to actually agree to a ceasefire and bring more humanitarian aid into Gaza there. And obviously the protests and what we saw play out at Columbia overnight are very visual and playing out on television across the country. I don't know if Biden's saying much right now necessarily helps those who are for Gaza. Is a prisoner exchange and a hostage release there. And it's that second part, the restoration of sustainable calm, which I'm sure the Biden administration is hoping they can get that across the finish line, and that'll kind of trickle down to these college campuses quickly.
But one thing I do want to point out, in the latest CNN poll, President Biden is 11 percentage points behind former President Donald Trump among young voters. That's 18 to 34-year-olds. These protests seem to show that the Israel-Hamas war is an issue that matters to young people and potentially young voters. Do you think that the campaign has to shift its strategy here?
Well, and they're running out of time. November is not that far away, Bree, and we talked about this a bit on Monday, those new CNN poll numbers that showed Biden's support trickling down a bit, down from 45% to 43%, I believe. former President Donald Trump support maintaining at 49% across the board. I think for the Biden administration to denounce any anti-Semitism in all its forms, especially on these college campuses, and obviously continue to support peaceful protests as well. He's clearly in a sticky situation here, and again, hoping something can get resolved overseas will kind of help to alleviate a little bit of pressure on that front.
Certainly will change things. Meanwhile, Trump is heading to Michigan on his days off from his criminal trial. Michigan has a large Arab American population. It's also a swing state. What do we expect to hear from him there?
Bree, great question. Teddy Roosevelt, of course, once referred to the presidency while he was in office as the bully pulpit. But I think time and time again with former President Donald Trump, we are seeing that not being in office as the country is dealing with some major issues is clearly a benefit, and he's kind of able to Monday morning quarterback some of these things out there. I think what we can expect to hear from former President Trump as he visits Michigan, Russia, and Ukraine, that if he were in office right now, there wouldn't be these issues in Israel and in Gaza. There wouldn't be these issues on college campuses. And, you know, we'll continue to kind of see him say that he's a better alternative to President Biden and kind of bank on just kind of coasting through that and hoping that those numbers hold to November.
All right, Jason, thank you very much.
Have a great day.
Also developing overnight, law enforcement tragedy in North Carolina. Authorities say at least 4 officers are dead following a shooting in a residential Charlotte neighborhood. 4 others were injured. Spectrum's Alexis Bell is on scene for us this morning. Alexis.
We're waking up this morning to 4 law enforcement officers who have been shot. We're not too far from the scene where it all happened yesterday. Right now, officers are blocking off where it happened, but I do want to show you video from yesterday in that active scene where it all was going down. 8 officers in total, Mecklenburg PD, and 4 from the U.S. Marshals Fugitive Task Force. While they were serving an active felony warrant, the officers approached and the suspect shot at them. That suspect now, Terry Clark Hughes Jr., has been named and was killed at the scene by officers. 3 of those that were shot and killed were U.S. Marshals, 1 named Sam Polish, Aiden Elliott, and a 3rd who has not been named yet. That 4th person who passed from his injuries in the hospital later is Joshua Iyer, a 6-year veteran and Charlotte Mecklenburg police officer who died from his injuries. Now CMPD's homicide unit and their Internal Affairs Bureau are conducting investigations, which is protocol when situations like this happen where officers are involved in a shooting. Alexis Bell in Charlotte, Spectrum News.
Just ahead on Spectrum News, the first astronauts heading into space for Boeing's Starliner program. We'll take a crew for the upcoming trip. That's just ahead.
Spectrum News Plus. News from a new perspective, dedicated to refreshing storytelling and empowering communities across the nation. With balanced reporting, providing real context and in-depth coverage 24 hours a day.
Here's a look at your forecast across the country.
Local stories, connecting communities. We are Spectrum News Plus. Streaming now on the Spectrum News app and free with your Spectrum subscription.
I don't remember how it started.
Go to that.
Our back and forth. It always came back.
Dad!
You probably don't remember what you told me,
That was perfect.
but I heard every word.
Hey, Bobo, do trees tell each other stories?
I'm sorry. I'm afraid I don't know that.
Hey, why don't we go find out? Listen.
I couldn't tell you.
Dad, do stars visit their friends?
Look!
meteorologist Julie Marquez, and a heads up that even though it's quiet today with sunshine in Chicago and in Milwaukee, the chance of rain and some thunderstorms will be in your area tonight. So enjoy the drier times for today. Chicago 71 degrees. Des Moines has to watch for a threat of severe weather with a high near 80 degrees. Indianapolis is 77 degrees, partly sunny today, a low of 59 tonight. Looking at the warmth here, Washington, D.C. and Philadelphia. Places like Buffalo, it's just a warmer week compared to what you had last week. Lows tonight include 57 degrees in Chicago, Green Bay at 50 degrees, Lexington, Kentucky 53, and 57 degrees for New York City. New York tomorrow, you'll still have a chance of rain. It starts tonight. It's a little bit better chance tonight, but a look ahead to Wednesday shows a low chance of getting some rain with a temperature pretty much in the 60s during the afternoon hours tomorrow. Meanwhile, on the other side of the country, we have Seattle with rain, but there's been areas of snow in the mountains in the Pacific Northwest. San Francisco is sunny, 66 today. Denver 75. Enjoy the sunshine. Your rain chances are increasing in the days ahead. Las Vegas is hot at 90 degrees with some gusty winds around, and we'll also have some stronger wind gusts in Southern California. Los Angeles 77 degrees today, partly sunny with a low of 55 degrees for tonight. And you can see these areas of rain the next 36 hours, then a little bit of a break before we get another batch of some of that to move in. Meanwhile, across the central part of the country, that risk of severe storms will continue. Tornadoes, very large hail, wind gusts over 70 miles per hour from Texas to places like Oklahoma, Kansas, Missouri, Nebraska, and Iowa in the days ahead. So the next 2 days, there's also going to be heavy rain that will lead to flooding concerns around Kansas City, lower amounts in St. Louis. You can see some rain in Kentucky and Tennessee, smaller chances for parts of the Carolinas and down into Florida too. Parts of the Southwest, though, will likely stay dry. Now in Texas today, we're looking at a high of about 90 degrees in Midland, mid-80s in Austin and in San Antonio for today. A look ahead to tonight shows temperatures should be dropping down into the 60s to near 70 degrees in Dallas, Texas. New Orleans tonight at 69 degrees, Memphis at 64, a little bit cooler.
On to Will Smith. Drives this ball to deep center field. Carroll's going back, looks up, watches it off the wall, over the yellow stripe.
For the first time since 2006, the Los Angeles Dodgers playing an entire 9 innings without striking out once. In their 8-4 win over the Arizona Diamondbacks yesterday, the Dodgers went 44 appearances at the plate without a strikeout, seeing off 5 Arizona pitchers in the process who walked 8. The U.S. Department of Agriculture is testing beef, including ground beef from grocery stores, for the H5N1 bird flu virus. The agency is conducting 3 separate studies, first sampling ground beef bought from stores, then taking samples from sick cows that have tested positive for the virus, and much of the virus is killed. H5N1 has been spreading in dairy cattle, but the USDA said it's confident the meat supply is safe, and there are multiple safeguards in place to protect consumers. The first astronauts flying on the Boeing Starliner mission to the International Space Station conducting final rehearsals before next week's historic launch. Spectrum's Greg Pallone is at Kennedy Space Center in Florida with more.
A trip from Houston for 2 astronauts who will soon head to space, flying in T-38s down to the Kennedy Space Center landing facility. It's a major step in the Boeing Starliner program as its 2-member crew is coming to KSC for their upcoming test flight to the ISS. Commander Butch Wilmore and pilot Suni Williams are flying into KSC in advance of their mission. It's the first time humans are flying Starliner to space.
Do we expect it to go perfectly? This is the first human flight to the spacecraft. I'm sure we'll find things out. That's why we do this is a tech to find things, and we expect to find things.
The NASA Commercial Crew Program flight is a test of the spacecraft systems as they dock with the orbiting outpost. The spacecraft was rolled to Pad 41 at the Cape Canaveral Space Force Station April 16th and lifted high atop Atlas V. Launch is set for May 6 from Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. The crew will spend 8 days on board the station before loading up in the Starliner for a return to Earth and a landing in the southern U.S. desert. For Suni Williams, it's a chance to make history and also represent her alma mater, Florida Tech, where she graduated from in 1996.
Well, they're in the center of it. You know, Florida Tech is right here, right down the street, Melbourne. They're in the center of all of this. I hope they all come out and watch, and hopefully I'll make them a little bit proud. So go Panthers.
The crew will be quarantined for the next 2 weeks, they'll be reviewing flight plans, but also getting some R&R at the beach and watching movies. Wilmore ended with a little humor.
Maybe a movie or two. So it's going to be hopefully a little bit relaxing.
What movie do you think we're going to watch? Navy pilot, Navy pilot. Top Gun Maverick.
At the Kennedy Space Center, Greg Pallone, Spectrum News.
Well, hopefully you don't have to ride into the danger zone. And you can certainly stay connected with us here at Spectrum News by getting your national and local headlines on the go. Just download the free Spectrum News app. It's available in the App Store and on Google Play. I'm Bree Driscoll. Thanks so much for watching. Your Spectrum News in 90 is coming up right after this short break. Stay with us.
The 2024 election will decide who leads our nation and the balance of power in Congress, impacting all of us. With our dedicated experts in local politics. Strengthening democracy by informing your community. That's our mission. Available on all of your favorite devices, exclusively on Spectrum.
At Spectrum, our workforce of over 100,000 employees are all located right in the U.S. You can find them in our stores, in the field, and in our call centers with 100% U.S.-based customer service. Our team works hard to provide the towns, cities, and neighborhoods they live in with the reliable services that everyone counts on, making us one of America's most trusted companies. We're Spectrum, creating jobs and opportunities across the country, and proud to be 100% U.S.-based.
When I never graduated from high school, I realized I wanted to go back to school. I didn't want to work these back-breaking jobs the rest of my life. And that I needed to come back to school. I felt accomplished, made me feel that I could take on whatever challenges life throws at you.
Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org.
My mother was always very familiar with her neighborhood, but one day she stopped at the stop sign for much longer than usual. And she didn't know whether she should go forward or turn, and she wasn't even really sure where she was at. It was very unsettling for her.
I felt so much better after my son told me, "Mom, I don't want you to worry or be afraid. I'll be there for you, and we'll figure it out."